Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. And last week we saw our very first build of the War Within Alpha, launching for testing to a number of players, with many getting the chance to experience firsthand some of the new hero talents and class changes coming with the next expansion. So far on this channel we've gone over the class overhauls coming to druids and monks, and highlighted specs such as arms and fury warrior, as well as retribution and holy paladin, as well as all of the spec talent changes coming to these playstyles. And with many other class updates for mages, warlocks, and shamans on the horizon, likely arriving in a future alpha build. But before we get additional changes for us to dive into, I wanted to finish out all of the initial class changes from the very first build, with only one class, the Evoker, left for us to go over. While neither Devastation nor Preservation are getting a ton of changes, the class community did put together a list of things they would like to see going forward, which I also wanted to highlight in today's video, as I actually found myself very drawn to the class of the Evoker from the Dragonflight Alpha, and I hope that this class continues to get only better in the next expansion. So for today's video, I want to go over the changes coming to Evokers and some of the future changes that the community would love to see in future alpha builds. But right before that, most of you guys watching these kind of alpha updates are still not subscribed. However, the more of you remind, the more of you do, so let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you're watching these videos anyway. Especially if you want to get more regular content regarding Dragonflight patch 10.26, 10.7, Season 4, or any of the future War Within updates. First, let's go over some of the basics. In the War Within, Evokers will no longer have the same hero class benefits like they did in Dragonflight. Similar to the introduction of Death Knights and Demon Hunters, the newest class of Evokers starts out at a much higher level, so they can easily jump straight into Dragonflight's content. But in the War Within, all Evokers will now start out at level 10 instead of 58. And if you have any interest in playing Evoker, maybe at some point in the War Within, but don't really want to spend the time leveling a fresh one from level 10, it's recommended to create an Evoker early just so you can skip out that leveling journey. As part of the level adjustment, Evokers will also learn durabilities and talents more similarly to other classes, while unlocking certain spells such as Mass Resurrection at level 38, or Fury of the Aspects, their version of Bloodlust or Heroism, at 48. Another feature coming to Evokers in the War Within is an update to the racial of Soar. Similar to druids and their flight form, Evokers have a natural affinity for flight. Whereas druids use basic flying, Evokers utilize the dragon riding system. With Dragon Riding becoming the new dynamic flight system in the War Within, we see a variety of our favorite mounts gain the ability to choose their flying style, letting you switch between the basic flying and the dynamic flying on a whim. This means that Druid's flight form gains the ability to move dynamically in the War Within Alpha, but the reverse is also true for Evokers, who gain the ability to use normal flying without the need to mount up. As for the specific talent changes when it comes to Devastation Evokers, we aren't seeing a lot of detailed talent adjustments like we did with specs such as Windwalker Monks, Retribution Paladins, or any spec of the Druid besides Guardian. That is, at least for now, in the very first build of the War Within Alpha. For now, however, we do have the devs addressing one of the more unique issues to Devastation, and that is their threat issue. Devastation's mastery passively increases their damage against targets depending on their health. This means that walking into a fresh dungeon pack or a boss encounter, their damage is going to be firing on all cylinders from the get-go, which easily leads to them generating a lot of snap aggro. Generally in modern WoW, aggro isn't really that much of an issue. However, in the past we did see a certain few specs such as arms warriors and fire mages falling into the very same issues where they had to wrestle for aggro against their tanks in dungeons, especially after the expansion of Legion, where they reworked tanks' threat through a number of changes. And Devastation gets to join arms and fire to be in that same unique position. As part of the War Within Alpha update, threat for certain abilities such as Pyre and Fire Breath is being reduced by 30% and 50% respectively, which is a pretty big deal on paper since it should allow Devastation to really unleash the full burst whenever they want to, which is a big quality of life improvement for such a fun and bursty spec. As for Preservation Evoker, we actually see a number of talent changes. As part of this update, the devs hope to accomplish a couple of goals. One of them is to reincorporate Life Spark, a tier set bonus from the very first raid of Dragonflight, into the Preservation talent tree, since it adds so much more interesting gameplay elements to their playstyle. And the other is to improve the Preservation talent options by providing them more flavorful pathing in the talent tree. with the left hand side of the tree being more in line with the green Dragonflight abilities and spells, which deal with direct healing, emerald blossoms, and party support. The right hand side is going to be more bronze inspired, dealing with time magic, unique healing effects, and powerful spell combo enhancements, while the middle of their tree is being reworked to be more of red Dragonflight themed, which amps up their resources, their fire effects, and unlocks a battle healer type of playstyle. With this, we see changes such as Font of Magic and Power Nexus being relocated towards the middle center of the talent tree. Further down, we got Titan's Gift, which causes Essence Burst to increase the effectiveness of your next Essence ability by 25%, be it Echo, Blossom, or their Disintegrate damage attack. Life Giver's Flame talent cost has also been reduced by 1 to allow them for better battle healer playstyle, and the middle capstone is now the Life Spark talent, where Reversion Healing has a chance to grant you instant casts of Living Flame to increase the ability's damage and healing by 50%, which compares so well together with the cleave that comes from using Fire Breath with the talent of Leaping Flames. The left-hand side of the capstones are now split into Cycle of Life and Dreamflight, while the right-hand side capstones are now split between Grace Period and Stasis. Personally, I was a big fan of the Preservation playstyle during that very first season of Dragonflight, mostly for its offensive potential in dungeons, so I'm glad to see some of those Dragonflight ideas making their way into their talent tree. Besides these updates, most of the changes that Evokers are seeing on the alpha come from the hero talents, between the Chrono Warden, Flame Shaper, and Scale Commander, which as of this moment I can't really test these without access to the War Within alpha. However, I did write down some notes listing features that many in the Evoker community would love to see from this class in the War Within, and it's something that I hope the devs might end up experimenting in future builds. On this list, we have some of the most sought after conveniences, such as possibly increasing their cast range beyond the 25 yards. Being a mid-range caster with tons of mobility is a very interesting trade-off for the class of the Evoker, but that can lead to certain complications. This whole limited range for Evoker is kind of their big class gimmick, but there's now a fine line between gameplay mechanics that are interesting or tedious, and depending on the player, the limitation on range falls into either one of these two categories. But even in-game data has confirmed that Evoker's mobility isn't even in the top 3 of all classes, at least for Devastation, which is meant to be the prime trade-off from having a shorter cast range. And I wonder if this problem could be easily solved with an inclusion of a new choice node somewhere in the class talent tree. Maybe one that keeps the short range but enhanced movement, with another choice that buffs the range up to 40 yards like every other caster, but maybe limits the hover charges down to 1 to even things out. Personally, if I saw a talent like this show up on the Evoker class tree, I would take it in a heartbeat, because as much as I love the mobility of an Evoker and the uniqueness of the class, I will admit the convenience of 40 yards would be definitely something I'd be interested in. Another very much sought after change that the community would love to see is to let Augmentation stop hoarding all of the best buttons and group abilities. It's no secret that Augmentation tends to be one of the more popular specs of Evoker by far when it comes to group and game content, mostly because they get to bring some of the most fun and the most useful tools that the other two specs simply don't. Meaning the community believes it's about time that Augmentation learned to share with its brother and sister specs. Some of the cooler Aug utility that players would love to be shared within the class tree would be things like Bestow Wernstone, a unique movement ability that allows anyone with a stone to teleport instantly to the Evoker and vice versa, a unique movement skill that only Augmentation has access to. Or how about smaller utilities such as Timelessness, letting Evokers help manage their group's aggro a little bit better in dungeons, which is a talent that often isn't getting even picked by Augmentation. Lots of dev players would love to get their hands on the Defy Fate cheap death talent, since Devastation sometimes feels a lot squishier compared to a lot of the Aug players. And many Preservation players would love to get their hands on Spatial Paradox, especially if Evokers are meant to keep their mid-range playstyle going forward. Overall, there's a ton of good suggestions that the community has brought up over the weeks before the War Within alpha, and with its launch last week, many of these ideas have been resurfacing again. As it is still early alpha, anything is possible. During alpha and beta cycles of an expansion, the devs usually like to keep an ear out for any and all suggestions on how to improve classes going forward, and I wonder if any of these suggestions at all will make their way into fruition over the next few weeks in the future War Within alpha builds going forward. But for now, that's going to be everything we got regarding Evokers in the War Within alpha. I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this video, and hopefully you enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below regarding Devastation, Preservation, or what type of changes would you want to see out of the Evoker to make you want to play this class heading into the War Within expansion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.